eye contact to express your message and achieve your speech's purpose. Make your body language smooth and natural. Alex is a psychologist working in an open residential program to treat adolescent boys who struggle with addictions. He's a father of 3 who, with their mother, are in Israel for the summer, and he's home alone right now, and he doesn't care for that much. Please welcome Alex.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. Thank you, fellow Toastmasters and honored guests. It's great to have you. Does anybody want to guess what I'm going to talk about today? One of the curious things about my work as a psychologist, one of the things that's curious to me in my work as a psychologist working with addicted teenagers, is the level of resistance that I get to the notion that it's a disease. And I've always found this curious because I get it from all corners. I get it from colleagues. I've been in doctoral level team meetings and had a fellow psychologist tell me he doesn't believe in disease model. I've had parents of addicted kids say, I don't believe it either. I've had kids say, I don't believe it. I've had grown-up addicts say, I don't believe it. And I'm like, why don't they believe something that is beyond question in the medical circles as belonging to the disease club? Now, just so you know, what does it take to become a member of the disease club? You've got to be an organ that gets a defect that manifests symptoms. Very, very simple, okay? So if I have, it's the pancreas, it doesn't produce enough insulin. The pancreas is the organ. The defect is it doesn't produce enough insulin, and the symptoms are all the symptoms we know to do with diabetes 1. Very simple model, and yet it's an incredibly powerful model because it's what doctors do when they try to figure out what's wrong with you. Its judicious application has basically doubled human life expectancy in the last 110 years. So it's a pretty powerful model, and yet it determines who gets to be in the club and who doesn't get to be in the club. Now, for millennia, addicts didn't get to be in the club because they didn't, well, actually, the disease model is really only about 100 years. Doctors decided about 120 years ago that this is how they would determine what's a disease and what isn't a disease. The problem is that addiction, the organ in question is the brain, okay, and the symptoms are behavior. And that is very confusing. I'm going to posit 3 reasons why people are so resistant to the idea of addiction being a disease. The first is that it's new. Only in the last 15 or 20 years with advances in imaging technology have we been able to determine what part of the brain gets broken that explains the symptoms we see in addicts. So it's taken a long time just to get the word out. Okay. Now, my rebuttal to that is, if somebody came up with a cure for pancreatic cancer tomorrow, how long do you think it would take to get the word out? Not very long. But for whatever reason, I'll give that the benefit of the doubt and say that it's just because it's new, that it's taken a long time. The second explanation is, as I indicated, that the symptoms are behavior. And when we see somebody behave a certain way, we assume they're choosing to behave that way. Very simple. I don't know if anybody's ever had this experience. You're going through your day, you're not hungry, you're not particularly hungry, and you get after you just had lunch, and you breeze by a plate of brownies. And all of a sudden, you sort of have these pangs of hunger. You reach down and eat a brownie. There are frank and observable neurological explanations for why you did that have nothing to do with your ability to make rational decisions. It's because for thousands and thousands of years, the ingredients in that brownie were incredibly hard to come by and were essential to our survival. Our brain knows that. And so it sends a signal to your stomach that says, you're hungry, eat that brownie. Of course, now those ingredients are readily available, and we all know the consequences of that. But some of you may remember, and I'm going to use some rather gritty examples of brain diseases that we might have heard of. Some of you have heard of Charles Whitman, the guy at the University of Texas in 1966 who got up in the clock tower and killed 16 and injured 32 people. He had an intuition that something was wrong. And in a note he left, he said, I want my brain biopsy or autopsy after I'm dead. And sure enough, they found a glioblastoma tumor sitting on his amygdala. Now, if any of you, the amygdala is responsible for emotional regulation. It's basically if it gets damaged, you have uncontrollable rage, you have impulsivity, some impulsivity problems, but essentially your ability to perceive emotional engagement gets seriously compromised. Now, there's no better explanation for why he did what he did than that tumor sitting on his amygdala. And I'm not saying that's the only reason why he did it, I'm not saying he wouldn't have done it if he hadn't had that tumor, but that's the best explanation. More recently, in the news, there was a gentleman who became, after 15 years of happy marriage and children and so forth, became a pedophile. And he was arrested, and he was going through his trial, and he had a seizure. They did a brain scan, they found a tumor sitting on top of the part of his parietal lobe that's responsible for impulse control and regulation. They took the tumor out, his pedophilia resolved. So these are examples that I hope make the point that some of the things we attribute to choice are not choices, and that our brain is an organ like any other organ, that when it suffers an injury or starts to break down, we will have behavioral symptoms. Okay? So, but the last explanation, and this is the explanation I think probably has the most explanatory power, because I haven't broken down, this is not scientifically based, so forgive me. And if I can't prove it scientifically, I'm going to write a book. That's one of the jokes in academia. If you can't prove it scientifically, just write a book about your theory. Imagine a 5-year-old, okay? 5-year-old boy, 5-year-old girl, and she had a nightmare. She went to bed, she woke up at 10 o'clock, she had a nightmare. She wants to go find mommy. Mommy's drunk, she's not available. Mommy, the same 5-year-old, mommy finds her in order to express her anger and frustration because she's drunk and she's on a knot. Those memories get written into our brain on an emotional level. Okay, the part of our brain that's responsible for establishing that memory is a part of the brain that is the emotion centers of our brain, the midbrain, if you will. To displace those memories, you've got to engage the emotions of the person. If I were to tell that 5-year-old when she grew up, oh, your mom was just an addict, that physical abuse that you endured at her hands, those were simply symptoms of her disease, she would be, she would come back pretty aggressively. Because it doesn't do justice to her experience, which was agonizing. Visceral terror, day in, day out, in many cases. And so when I come to her and say it's just a disease, those symptoms, those are just symptoms of her disease, it doesn't do justice to their emotional experience. And to me, that is the single most, to me, that's one of the best explanations for why when I approach somebody and says it's not a disease, it's because they are thinking here. The explanations don't add up to the experience they had here, which was painful. And it's until you engage the emotion centers of the brain with somebody who's been through that experience that you can begin to displace and bring some of the reasoning up here that you will have some success. Thank you.
Our next speaker is John Locke. John is giving an advanced speech.